It's the morning of April the 19th, 2016, and this is not going to be your normal stream today, I can assure you. The first half an hour, we're going to divert today. I decided at the last minute I had to talk about another subject for the first half of the show, so the top of the hour we'll roll into Fukushima again and every day after. But today is a different day. Today we're going to talk about the Saudi papers and the implications of what I'm seeing in the media and people around this planet. And we're going to do that because that's important. We're not hearing the right narrative out there. The story's not being covered. We're not talking about what really happened on September 11, 2001 and the implications. Well, for starters, you got to think about September 11, 2001. We went to Afghanistan, where there's now 5 million orphans, to get 10,000 Taliban. And we got millions dead, millions missing, millions in refugee camps, millions unaccounted for, millions more injured, all of them starving to death. The entire country has been wrecked. Their pensions, their banks, everything is destroyed, their patents. Then we went to Afghanistan, or Iraq. Now, on top of that, we done the same thing in Iraq. Then we done it in Syria. We done it in Libya. We done this all for 10,000 people. And there was a couple of hundred of them over in India. And we got 22,000 drone strikes over there, killing an average of 10, 20 to 100 per strike. Never the Taliban. You can't get rid of them. They're like kryptonite or something. So we wrecked the planet, literally, in the Middle East, destroyed it to get 10,000 people. Because of September 11, 2001. And now, apparently, Saudi funded the hijackers. And so now everybody's talking about the hijackers. Who said, D said, who done, what were their names, blah, 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 blah. Yeah? And there's another side to that story that affects you and your loved ones and everybody else on this planet, and has ever since, and put you in a stranglehold of a tyrannical system that is choking the living shit out of you, whether you understand that or not. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk you through September 11th. Now, everything we're talking about happened in 11 seconds. In 11 seconds. Okay? And so, first off, we're going to talk about Building 6. And Building 6, it never gets discussed. Now, Building 6, the purveyors of lies will tell you that, a big chunk of metal came off the building, or a big piece of the buildings came down, and that crushed Building 6. But there's more to that story. And we're going to jump back and forth, in and out of that video clip that we're going to play. It's a 12-minute clip. And this is a technical aspect, and this does have to do with nuclear, by the way, because of directed energy weapons. But first, you got to understand what really took place with the Twin Towers. And Building 7, we can touch on that. That's not... See, look over here, don't look over there. Or look over here, don't look over there. That's what happened to everybody. Now, the information I'm showing you took me a couple of years to compile it, understand it, sort it out, and make the little video. It was actually more than that. And make the video. To put it together in the context, it was a great video, but we're going to be breaking it up. And I hope everybody gives me an opportunity to explain this. I hope you don't turn away from another narrative. I hope you're not already, you got to look at, the way I live my life is, if I don't like something, I turn it off, I'll go back and watch it 2 times, 3 times, 4 times now, to find out what triggered that in me. Why did I reject that? Just because it's this assumption that it was going to be garbage or something like that. And I was always wrong about my first impressions, is what I discovered. That's why I am like I am. And so this first one is pictures inside of Building 6. We're going to go big screen. I'm going to have to hit the audio on the fly originally, because I never checked the audio to see how loud. It's really good audio, but I never checked to see if it's going to boom into your home or your apartment. And it might be late at night. And so just watch your audio when I'm doing videos. I'm not tuned into this new software. I've been at this for months trying to get the kinks out of it. And here we go. Over to this video. that I created. Now this first 3-minute video is pretty self-explanatory. You won't see big chunks of metal that fell in and crushed all this. And so when I originally got these pictures, these are the interior of Building 6, and you probably won't see them anywhere else in your travels. Definitely not in your typical travels. You will have to hunt and hunt and hunt to come up with these 2 pictures that we're going to explore. And here we go.
There it is. That's the inside of Building 6.
I'll adjust the audio.
The walls are intact, the basement is intact, and nobody has a friggin' clue what to do to this. I wonder what's going through his head. No desks, there's no chairs, no office furniture, there's no bathrooms. Everything is rusted, everything is hanging symmetrically straight down, and the floor is intact. Does it look like any big chunks of metal came down here and smashed all this in? What smashed all this in? If it got smashed in, nothing, say, or you would see it here right now. The basement's intact, the walls are intact. And so this is something, I can't explain it. It's not a nuclear explosion. It's not nanothermite that done something like that. It's not an air blast over it or some kind of obvious thing. There's people everywhere. Nobody knows what happened to this. It's a big friggin' mystery. And it's certainly not explosives. It's certainly not some kind of incendiary devices. It's not some kind of kinetic energy devices. Even though you see how everything is hanging, but it's not kinetically smacked apart and blown apart. Everything is symmetrical. So there's no, and everything is, all the offices are empty and void of the floors and the wall boards and doors and any kind of framing. It's just totally missing. This, you can see in here, is but the only thing I've seen with ceilings left in it, just that one little corner section over here. But everything else is obviously missing. And that's where one of the towers kind of almost spilled over, and people said that's what crushed the inside of it. But now we finally see that that certainly wasn't a factor. Nobody knows what happened here. And let's go and look at that post right here. See that post right there? Here's a better shot of it. Now look at around his feet there. You can see.
Now I want you to consider that in 11 seconds, all of the interior of this building got sucked out in that 11 seconds that the buildings collapsed. Let's keep going. Oh, I smurfed that up. Hang on. Make a bit of noise.
Explosives. It's certainly not some kind of incendiary devices. It's not some kind of kinetic energy devices. Even though you see how everything is hanging, but it's not kinetically smacked apart and blown apart. Everything is symmetrical. So there's no, and everything is, all the offices are empty and void of the floors and the wall boards and doors and any kind of framing. It's just totally missing. This, you can see in here, is but the only thing I've seen with ceilings left in it, just that one little corner section over here. But everything else is obviously missing. And that's where one of the towers kind of almost spilled over, and people said that's what crushed the inside of it. But now we finally see that that certainly wasn't a factor. Nobody knows what happened here. And let's go and look at that post right here. See that post right there? Here's a better shot of it. Now look at around his feet there. You can see everything is like it's a disassociation. It never got crushed. You can see that. Look, it never got crushed. Everything is missing. All the furniture is missing. Everything. All the color is missing. All the walls and everything else, like I say. And it's just even reaching way into these places. It's like it all got sucked out. But where did it go? It didn't go down to the floor. Because there's the floor. See that car there? The parking lot's still intact. All this never went down to the parking lot. It got broke a bit, but it never went down there. And you can see everything is missing. There's no indication these were offices, or this was an office building at any given time. And you can see where one of the towers spilled over, and people said that's what done the damage. but you can see, it spilled over, but that stuff never took out the core of a 500,000 square foot building. And I don't know what done it, but there it is. That's the inside of Building 6. The walls are intact, the basement is intact, and nobody has a friggin' clue what could do this. And that's where one of the towers kind of almost spilled over, and people said that's what crushed the inside of it. But now we finally see that certainly wasn't a factor. Nobody knows. According to Wiki, on February 1st, 2003, the Space Shuttle Columbia, trying to re-enter Earth's atmosphere at Mach 25, 17,500 miles per hour, or 27,359 kilometers an hour.
Encountering the atmosphere above the Pacific Ocean to the north of the Hawaiian Islands.
Willie, we're with you on remaining APU start.
Pilot Willie McCool calling down that he's starting the 2 remaining auxiliary power units on board now, so all 3 will be up and running. They supply power for the shuttle's hydraulic systems. Columbia's altitude now 71 statute miles as it enters Earth's atmosphere above the Pacific Ocean en route to the Kennedy Space Center. Its speed 17,000 miles per hour.
The shuttle levels its wings, nose up about 45 degrees, and a series of 4 banks meant to slow the shuttle down.
Columbia with wings level and nose angled up about 40 degrees to control heating as it descends into the atmosphere. Its altitude now 68 miles. As Columbia descends into the atmosphere and approaches the continental United States, it'll perform the first in a series of 4 banks. It performs as it approaches the Kennedy Space Center. The first bank to the right, then back to the left, then back to the right, and then a final bank to the left as it approaches Kennedy and the shuttle landing facility runway. Those designed to dissipate speed for the shuttle as it descends into the atmosphere toward landing.
First bank slows them down to 13,200 miles per hour, or 21,200 kilometers an hour.
40 miles. Speed 13,200 miles per hour.
At 200,000 feet up, not only is the shuttle screaming along at 5 miles a second, but the temperature from the friction in the air reaches 3,000 degrees. Both Wiki and the New York Times says Columbia disintegrated, and Fox News says disintegration. By contrast, New Scientist reported Columbia was traveling at over 20,000 kilometers an hour when it broke up. But we know they recovered over 80,000 pieces of the Columbia, like the landing gear, with the wheels still on it.
Moving the 89,400 pieces of Columbia is expected to be completed by October the 1st.
Flight 93, alleged to have crashed in the field, and the landing gear is alleged to have atomized. In Shanksville, Pennsylvania. This was a passenger jet that was traveling 26 times slower than the space shuttle at only 500 miles an hour. It leaves no wreckage for first responders, who never even found a wedding ring for the loved ones to have closure. Maybe it should head over to CNN and report a wreckage miles away.
And Miles, it ended at the site you can see over my left shoulder, marked by the American flag. That is where United Flight 93 crashed into the earth and nearly vaporized after a heroic...
And just like Flight 93 in Shanksville, Flight 77 at the Pentagon leaves no seats, wings, luggage, engines, tails, not even bodies. Not even a pair of sneakers survived Flight 77 crash at the Pentagon.
But from my close-up inspection, there's no evidence of a plane having crashed anywhere near the Pentagon. The only site is the actual side of the building that's crashed in, and as I said, the only pieces left that you can see are small enough that you could pick up in your hand. There are no large tail sections, wing sections, a fuselage, nothing like that anywhere around, which would indicate that the entire plane crashed into the side of the Pentagon.
We got over 80,000 pieces of the Space Shuttle Columbia traveling 26 times faster at 21,200 kilometers an hour.
Moving the 89,400 pieces of Columbia is expected to be completed by October the 1st.
Okay, so I'll just come back to us for a second. So the Pentagon, there was no wreckage. There was no skid marks into the lawn. There was no, these engines are bigger than the room you're looking at. There was no bodies. There was no rings, no sneakers. There was no, there was nothing, no wallets, no credit cards. Nothing survived. Diamond rings, nothing survived. But all it had done was crashed into the ground. That's all it done. And we had planes crash into the ground all over the world, all over the time, and it's stupid, unbelievable, inconceivable. Every single body, you name it. Now we're going to go back to this video. We're going to talk now about the buildings, in particular the two Twin Towers. And they atomized an aerosol. I'm sorry, Fukushima. They did. They atomized an aerosol in 11 seconds. Now, if I drop a cannonball off the building's got to the floor before the cannonball. So if you jumped over the building at the same time the building started to collapse, you hit the ground literally at the same time. So that, I'm smoking a cigarette, that's doesn't have 7,000 chemicals. Think about that lie, and didn't think about this lie. So I'm going to break this one up. This is really detailed, but it really drives the point home, and let's not waste any time. Did I smurf up? No.
It is hard to conceive, but 3 days ago, both World Trade Towers rose 1,362 feet into the sky. Engineers at the firm that built the building's best guess to account for the missing 1,200 feet of material from each tower is that large portions simply vaporized into the dust that rained down on New Yorkers immediately after the collapse. It was that powerful.
Get out of here!
We're talking here about 43,600 windows, 600,000 square feet of glass, 200,000 tons of structural steel, 5 million square feet of gypsum, 6 acres of marble, and 425,000 cubic yards of concrete, turned in good part into a cloud, says environmental medical doctor Stephen Levin.
I was astonished at the degree to which solid materials were turned into pulverized dust as a consequence of that building collapse. I think it was striking.
425,000 cubic yards of cement turned to dust. Let's divide that by the typical 8-yard cement trucks you see every day for context, and that would work out to 53,125 cement trucks. Let me say that again, 53,125 of your average, typical everyday cement trucks.
Okay, and so imagine aerosoling, atomizing a cement truck in 11 seconds. What kind of technology exists that we can atomize a cement truck, let alone 53,000 of them? But what kind of technology exists that we can atomize a cement, 8 cubic yards of cement in 10 seconds? Not the truck, but in reality, because there's so much steel there, you can say the truck. And as we come up to that, each part of this, I want you to think about that. How did that atomize in 11 seconds? How did that much material vaporize in 11 seconds by being hit by a plane? Now, the top 15 stories of the building that allegedly collapsed the rest of the building, if you talk to an engineer, they'll say that will only collapse 15 stories below it. It can only collapse what its weight is. And it'll collapse itself at the same time, and then the rest of the building is left standing. That is not what we saw. And then one part of the other building was tipping over, but didn't fall for some reason. But the reason is easy to see as you watch the rest of this. Here we go again.
And let's say each truck is 30 feet long. Multiply that by 53,125 is 1.6 million foot. Or 318 miles of trucks in a line, tailgate to bumper, give or take 50 or 60 miles, Or think of 10 container ships full of cement trucks to understand how much cement.
Okay, now, how do you atomize that many container ships? How? That's what it was. That's how much it took. That's the volume. How could that disappear in 11 seconds? What on this planet, besides a directed energy weapon, because that's the only thing we can come up with, and a directed energy weapon is reliant on isotopes from a chain reaction. Let's keep going.
And the dust. 6 acres of marble turned to dust. Look up 6-acre islands for sale, and if you still can't wrap your mind around how much marble that is, imagine you have to go on that island with a wheelbarrow and bring 6 acres of heavy marble to a boat, and you can't text or tweet or Facebook or YouTube and tell you collected 6 acres of really heavy marble by yourself. And it's not dust yet. Over 5 million square feet of gypsum turned to dust. 5 million square feet of raw gypsum would fill up half a container ship. But it wasn't raw gypsum. The Twin Towers skyscrapers were full of gypsum wallboards and ceilings, so add another container ship of material and turned to dust. The Tar Valley in southern France has the world's tallest vehicle bridge. It's 1,125 feet. Driving along the viaducts, it is said to feel like you're flying, and it has a series of 7 columns. Each one are 290 foot tall and they weigh 700 tons. So the 200,000 tons of structural steel that turned to dust on September 11, 2001, if you divide it by the 700 ton towers, that's 285 towers that turned to dust. It's a lot. They're big towers, and that's a lot of dust. 285 of them is enough towers for 40 of those bridges. Or consider 200,000 tons of structural steel is enough to build 4 of the biggest container ships on Earth.
So 4 of the biggest container ships on Earth of steel atomized and aerosoled in 11 seconds. And the only thing we're worried about is who the hijackers were and how much money Saudi Arabia pumped into something. Saudi Arabia doesn't have directed energy weapons like this. Saudi Arabia couldn't pull that off. Saudi Arabia couldn't atomize and aerosol 4 container ships, the biggest ones on the planet, yeah? Okay, let's keep going.
There was 600,000 square foot of glass, and the weight is, you multiply 1.7 pounds for every 1/8 of an inch of a square foot of glass. And so that works out to 97 million pounds, or 2,448 transport trucks at 40,000 pounds per truck. It would create a 146,880 foot or 29-mile traffic jam of transport trucks full of glass, bumper to bumper. And that also turned to dust on September 11, 2001.
But most interesting in the mix, they think, at specks of steel that used to be beams and elevators, marble from the lobby floor and facings. So what were once the strongest architectural elements in the 2 towers were pulverized, large portions turned into clouds.
They call it pulverized because they can't explain it away. But also on that day, there was around 1,100 cars that randomly caught fire within a square mile of the Twin Towers. The flows of the clouds that you're looking at were described as pyroplastic, and that was why all the cars had melted down. But if you look at the pictures of that, the poles, there's no Pompeii dead bodies there mummified from the pyroclastic flow. The trees weren't singed, the signposts weren't singed, the telephone poles, but the cars were melted, the engines were melted, the door handles were melted. Think about that. That's not two planes hitting a tower and atomizing and aerosoling and evaporating all of these millions of pounds of this and millions of pounds and millions, and just basically 20 container ships fully loaded were atomized and aerosoled. Okay, we're almost finished. We got two more to get through. I'm not sure what the audio, I'm going to have to cut the audio to do this properly, but let's bang through. It's only short 18-second, 20-second videos. Now, what you're looking at in the right-hand bottom corner is Building 7. That building, don't quote me, 700 feet tall, 640 to 740, 740, say 700 feet tall. Now, see the structure in the background that's standing up, and that would be your, that's, it's like a little flagpole tower. But what it is, it's I-beams and big I-beams hanging off it. And it's a part of the building that didn't fall, but in the cloud dust alongside of it, to your left of it, is a structure that tips over.
There goes the second tower. Unfucking-believable.
Now you see over Building 7, your bottom right-hand corner, a piece of metal falling. See that? Now I'm going to turn the audio down on that because that's going to get confusing for everybody in the background. And they're only 20-second videos. We'll play that again. Now you see a piece falling to your left. Boom. Now look at the piece in the center of your screen. Now that's around 900 foot tall. That's steel. That's steel. There's going to be lots of dust on it. I'll agree with that. But steel cannot fall straight down. It's like a tree. Can a tree fall straight down? Of course not. And so nor can the steel. And it cannot. The basement is not 700 foot deep, and the basement didn't cave in, and we have footage of the basement, of rescuers in the basement where the automobiles are too. So this structure never went into the basement. Now watch this. See that? It's falling into its own footprint and atomizing and aerosoling right in front of your eyes. There's no flames, there's no sparks, there's no nanothermite, there's no nuclear explosion, there's no kind of visible reality to explain it away. See? So let's watch another clip. Now see, the one tipped over, but it's dustifying. That's the only thing you can really call it. Now look at this big structural steel, rebars, and I-beams just atomized and aerosoled. Did I turn the volume off on that? Yeah. Well, the volume's off, but I can still hear it on my headphones for some reason, but whatever. One more time. Watch that piece fall down. Let's go back to the beginning of it. And watch that piece counted when it starts to fall. I'll count it with you. Okay, you can see it wobbling 1001, 1002, 1003, 1000, okay, 1001, 1002, 1003, 1004. Can you imagine a tree atomizing and aerosoling in 4 seconds? This is 900 foot high, 800 foot high. The building to the left was 700 foot high. Now this cannot fall down symmetrically through the path of greatest resistance. It doesn't work that way. You can't do that. It's like collapsing this cup onto itself. It's stupid, moronic to even consider it. So you have all these container ships, enough steel to make 4 that atomized and aerosoled in 11 seconds. And these buildings with all that material and this metal right in front of your eye, atomizing and aerosoling right in front of your eyes. turning to dust. I cut steel with torches 6 inches thick, and you can spray, pieces of molten lava 50, 60 feet away from you when you're doing it. And I did. I had the record for setting yourself on fire. I set myself on fire one time with a torch 4 times in one day. They threatened to put a first aid guy with a fire extinguisher if I'd done it any more than that day. That was the day they had all the big wigs coming through. Day to run around on a fire. Put it out, put it out. Okay. I hope I clarified what I'm talking about. That 911, we're worried about whose directed energy weapon that uses radioactive isotopes from nuclear reaction, from man-made chain reaction, because you're talking about, see, like a gram of this stuff is 1,000,000 watts. Is 1,000,000 watts. Is 1,000,000 watts. And so imagine a half a pound. Woo! So now imagine 5 million pounds. Woo! Remember, when it comes to lasers, it's been around for 50 years. They were cutting metal 50 years ago with it, for goodness sakes. They were hitting the moon and measuring the distance by the millimeter. They disabled a satellite 350 miles up in space, the Americans. China painted one and got in all kinds of trouble when crazy Bush reading goats to the kindergartner. Anyway, let's keep going. Back to Fukushima. We came in right on schedule, 3 minutes past it. Let me get rid of the replay. And, I'm worried because everybody's out there propagating the Saudi 911 papers. I'll just leave it at that. They're propagating these 911 papers as going to be a revolutionary. The revolution is the stuff I showed you, and that Saudis, why they might have funded everything and organized everything. It's that technology is military-industrial technology. That's the military-industrial complex that done this. And it wasn't a foreign country because we would have attacked them. It wasn't people in caves. Like, we created millions of refugees, millions of orphans, millions missing, millions starving to death, millions displaced, wrecked entire countries to get 10,000 people that allegedly done that. But these are people that are using rifles. How can you go to war with ships and submarines and jets and helicopter fighters against people on the ground shooting? That's not a war. That's a slaughter. And so you use them as the bad guys. You create them. And you say, we got to get the Taliban. You create this event. See, in the old days, a dictator, he said, we're going to war. No one argued. Now, because you live in what you think is a democracy where 51% can take away the rights of 49%. If you're part of that 49%, you're not free. But what we do now is we stage an event, we blame it on somebody, and then we go to war. Instead of a dictator saying we're going to war, we have the illusion that we have some kind of checks and balances or freedoms. So, Fukushima has killed the Pacific Ocean. It has killed the Pacific Ocean. It has killed the Pacific Ocean. We took this boat here, we crowdfunded this operation, and we went through the entire coastline of British Columbia, Canada, 15,000 miles over a 260-day period, and that I spent 5 months without coming home. And instead of this, now I got 14,000 hours underwater. I've worked at every industry on both oceans. And so I'm very familiar with how the ocean is, and there's 5,600 species. And so the typical picture of anywhere on the coastline would look like that, or look like that. And every millimeter is jostling for life. And these are all in Louise Narrows and the Queen Charlottes. At the top, you see the Queen Charlottes. Now, the higher quality video, it'll be up on YouTube, Beautiful Girl by Dana. You'll be able to see really good detail on that stuff. But the arrows were just a representation of the areas that we flushed out, where we took thousands of pictures, and you can find those pictures at the nuclearproctologist.org. Now, this was pre-Fukushima. After Fukushima, we went back to the same spot, and this is what we saw, that the bird that bird over my head there on that beach, that's the little zodiac, and that goes with the big zodiac. That's normally on the roof. But there was nothing left. It was an extinction event. It's all gone. So instead of being lush and incredible, and you can just eat wherever you're to, just load yourself up. And I mean, the entire coast was like that. The entire coast was just incredible. No matter where you went, it was inconceivable. Now you will starve to death, and so did the animals. That's why we see the mass die-offs of the birds and all the other animals and mammals and whales. They all starved to death because there's no fish in the ocean, and when they come ashore that they can eat, just a bigger predator fish that are eating each other. But down to 1% of 1% at best. And Dr. Raymond Gilmedy from Loveless Respiratory Research Institute, his studies, 94 of them, on beagle dogs and beagle puppies. By the way, curium isotopes are the major byproduct, not cesium, not iodine. Curium is like plutonium, and Raymond Gilmedy done those studies on curium. He also mostly done studies on plutonium and americium, neptunium. And what he discovered on the studies on giving them to beagle dogs and beagle puppies, 144, that third sentence, and then the fourth sentence, and the fifth, and the sixth, and the seventh, and the eighth, and the ninth, and the 10th, and the 11th. This is, you can't ignore these studies. Now, he's just one of thousands of institutions where all the dogs died. All the dogs died. Now, when we talk about Fukushima, we'll talk about Fukushima. I'll move myself over a little tiny bit, and I'll probably actually bring up the big screen. I haven't set this one up properly yet, and so I just flipped to it this morning. Dana, get with the program, Dana. You're like, I'll get it. I swear, I'll get it. I got it. Okay. So, Japan had another massive earthquake over the last number of days, over 500 aftershocks. And one of those was a 7 out of a 7, which is a 10. Japan uses a 7 out of 7 scale to trick you and manipulate you. And then CNN will come out and say it's a 7.2, reinforcing that, when it actually only goes to a 7. That's a 10 on your scale. They only started doing that because they knew these earthquakes were coming. So that was the deception. So MSNBC and BBC and Reuters and CBC in Canada and all the nuclear apologists will come out and say, oh, it's just a 7, no big deal. But you got 450,000 people now living in shelters. You got an island trying to split in two. You got a country now that's ripped apart. And the IAEA and Atomic Energy, the oversighter, all say, we're not shutting off the reactor, the Mox fuel plant. I don't care if she blows up. So rather than preventively, like if a terrorist was coming, they go through it could be a terrorist, we got to shut down the plant. Have an earthquake ripping the country apart, 500 aftershocks. We're not shutting it off. We're going to wait till there's a problem. Like, boom. These are evil. That's evil. You shut it down, you wait till the earthquake stops, start the thing back up if that's what you're going to do, but you don't put everybody's life in jeopardy. You don't got that right because you're working for a corporation or you're working for the government. You're a scumbag in a suit. You're nobody. You're insignificant. And you'll find that out really soon because the world is waking up. Japan was inundated with tsunami that traveled at 600 miles an hour and ripped the country. Ripped that country. A new one. Ripped the country to pieces. Wrecked everybody's life. You couldn't get power back in there if you wanted to. The country was completely and utter unimaginable chaos. And this is where people died along that coastline. They died by groups of hundreds throughout 400 kilometers of the coastline, the same spot where there's the nuclear power plants. And there wasn't just one plant, there was many plants. In fact, the Japanese governor said all 10 that were affected severely needed to be dismantled. All 10. What did he mean by that? Well, 30 million bags of fallout, blah, blah, blah. But see, the coastline where all the plants were, where all the people were, died. They died because this creature came through, because that creature came through, because they couldn't restore power. And after so many hours, if you don't restore power... Now here's Seth Dorn. Hang on, we'll come back to him in a minute. Hang on. And this guy here, he drives me crazy. But anyway, he talks about... Get my headphones back up. I just want you to hear what he's talking about, how if the power plant doesn't get power, if it doesn't get power,
will not reach the level of Chernobyl. And Chernobyl was a lot of radioactivity. Like I said,
Chernobyl was a candlestick compared to Fukushima.
Power to those, the safety systems fail. If they lose power to those, to that reactor or to any other reactors.
Yeah, if they lose power to any of those reactors, how are you going to get power? Hey, wait for it. How are you going to get power? I'll get there. How are you going to get power to that? Huh? How are you going to get power? Where are you going to hook it up? What are you going to hook it up to? How are you going to get power to that reactor? That looks like that now. But allegedly looked like that. And that's what set Dorn.
Of the decommissioning work taking place here in Reactor 4.
Taking place here in Reactor 4. He done a documentary on Reactor 4 where he claims he's inside of that. Where he claims Dad is inside of that. And where he claims it's inside of that. He claims Dad is inside of that. That CBS faked a video. Faked the video.
Decommissioning work taking place here in Reactor 4.
Reactor 4. I cut it off. Do you think that that's okay? Do you think that's trendy? That's cool for him to come out and fake that? You do realize it's faked, right? You do realize that. You're not gullible, are you? You're not naive, are you? You're not stupid. You're not a moron, are you? Are you? Do you think he's inside of that? Do you think he's inside of that? Do you think it looks like that in there? If you do, I can't help you. Nobody can fucking help you. You are beyond help. You're actually stupid. You're a moron. If you think inside of that is Set Dorn. No, not the boat, Dana. Set Dorn.
Of the decommissioning work taking place here in Reactor 4.
Now listen to this.
At the end of our tour, we were checked for radiation exposure. In 4 hours, I received the equivalent of less than a chest x-ray.
So now he's saying he's in there for 4 hours. How come Harvard never went there? How come Yale never went there? How come MIT never went there? How come Stanford never went there? How come Oxford never went there? How come none of the institutions and shakers and movers that all went to Chernobyl never went to Fukushima? Huh? Anybody? Here's Harvard, what Harvard had to say on March the 16th, 5 days after the accident.
Firstly, Units 1 through 3 are suffering core damage accidents and perhaps spent fuel pool accidents as well. The spent fuel pool is located at the top of the reactor building, which in each case is damaged. Units 1 and 3, in fact, destroyed at that location.
In fact, destroyed. I put those pictures there for everybody. In fact, destroyed. Look at the building down your right, bottom left-hand corner. Is that is there a fuel pool at the top of that building? Look at Unit 4 on your right-hand side in the bottom. Is there a fuel pool in the top of that? No, of course not. Once it hasn't got water, it atomizes and aerosols on its own. As parent daughters or gases, it evaporates for the majority of it. Look at the top left-hand corner, Unit 1. This is MIT. I'm sorry, Harvard. 5 days after Fukushima, telling you that they're all destroyed. There's Set Dorn.
Decommissioning work taking place here in Reactor 4.
CBS faked the video. But what did Harvard just tell you?
Firstly,
okay.
I'd like
MIT.
to welcome our own students from nuclear science and engineering and other members of the community here at MIT, and also visitors, I think, from elsewhere.
And shortly after 3:30, there was a hydrogen explosion in the building of Reactor 1. So when of that explosion, not long after, the evacuation zone was extended to 20 kilometers radius. On Monday at 11 a.m., so this is now on the third day, there was a hydrogen explosion of building of Reactor 3. In the meantime, reactor 2 fuel rods, what is reported to have been fully uncovered, and they quite soon began to inject seawater, borated seawater.
You can't inject borated seawater into a place that where 400 kilometers of the coastline just got tore apart. You can't get in there. You couldn't get in there. They couldn't even get power to anything, let alone inject anything. See, but he told you that, but he also tells you this.
Water. At 6:14 a.m. on Tuesday, that's today, of course, but since they're 13 hours ahead of us, that was quite a while ago now, there was a third explosion. This was in reactor 2. This was inside, as far as we can tell, inside or near the containment. And another worry that arose was on that same day was that the reactor 4 building, reactor 4 is adjacent to reactor 3, was observed to be aflame.
Does that look like it's a flame? It completely destroyed. And what you see there looks like a person. We think that's photoshopped in. If not, he died in the building. He never came out. You can't go in there. That's why they can't get into Chernobyl, okay? They can't get. That's why all the robots are dying. They can't get into these buildings. They threw fuel rods all over the place, and it will melt your organs in minutes if you get that close to it.
And this was sort of at the same time that radiation levels were increasing further. There was a lot of suspicion that this fire was in the spent fuel pool. However, since that time, TEPCO has said that there was an oil leak in a water pump and that was what was the cause of the fire. This was sort of at the same time that radiation...
So a water leak, not a blown up building, was the cause of the report. Not what you're looking at, but it was a oil leak. See? Do you get it? And seeing as we're here, might as well do Stanford. It starts off a little bit loud, and that's okay. Here we go.
Stanford University.
We're very, very lucky to...
And Stanford was April 11th. This is Matthew Walls, who's a turncoat. He's an ex-journalist. He works for Nuclear Matters or something now. One of the nuclear blogs. He's pro-nuclear. But he does tell you the buildings were destroyed right away, didn't he?
Today to have two real experts on this topic. The first is Matthew Wald from the New York Times.
Although it's a mess to try to cope with a meltdown, or three meltdowns in the spent fuel pool right after a tsunami.
3 meltdowns and fuel pool damage. But the fuel pools are missing for sure from Unit 4 and Unit 3. We know Unit 4 was gone on the 18th of March. Within 7 days, Unit 4 had disappeared completely, as you've seen from the pictures, right? Okay. Now, Jan Brooks, Miss Milky the Clown, has put up an interview at her Miss Milky the Clown 1 website. And everybody needs to get that and collect that and keep that and pump that out there and refer to that and utilize that. It's about tritium. As Arnie and Maggie Gunderson are interviewing Farley from UK, I think he is, or I can't remember. But anyway, he's an expert and he refers to studies. I haven't imported them, but I will grab them and import them. And I'll get through all of that. That's really important, extremely important that everybody does that. And so just to recap, you had the meltdowns confirmed at Unit 1. I'll bring up big pictures. That's Unit 1. This is Unit 2. These are many, many Chernobyls, not counting the fuel pool, which are the reactor cores, that are just as deadly as the reactor core that's in the reactor. There's no different. They can go into a chain reaction and melt down. That's what are kept up there for 10 years. They're unbelievable volatile, very dangerous. All of that is gone. Unit 3, you don't need to be a genius to work that one out. And Unit 4, of course, we know what Seth Dorn told you. We know how big of a lie that was, right?
Of the decommissioning work taking place here in Reactor 4.
A little monster, right? But anyway, he wasn't in that. He wasn't in that, right? He's not in that, no matter what you want to believe. They want you to think that the reactors throughout the coastline survived the tsunami and the earthquake and everything else. I want you to think that even though it came right to the nuclear power plant, wrecked everything. Look at Building 4. Seth Dorn says he's inside of that. Seth Dorn, here he is, inside of Unit 4.
Of the decommissioning work taking place here in Reactor 4.
At the end of our tour,
well, you're not
we
in
were checked
Reactor
for
4, buddy,
radiation
are you?
exposure. In 4 hours, I received the equivalent of less than a chest X-ray.
See, that is the most disgusting thing imaginable. Here he is, he says he's inside of that building there. That blew up. That detonated. That's Unit 3, rather. That's right alongside of it. That's mixed oxide fuel. That's 2 million times worse than any current reactor on the planet. 6 million times worse. Not counting the reactor cores on the roof. 6 million times worse than Chernobyl's accident. All on its own. Each one of these atoms, and there's more atoms in a gram than there is in every grain of sand on all the beaches. Stephen Starr talks about that repeatedly. And how can people think that anybody got fuel rods out of that? And I know people out there that are experts telling you they got the fuel rods. David Suzuki was just one of them. Oh, you know, number 4 collapses. You think that's going to collapse? I do. But here's the picture that they showed everybody. Here's what it looked like on the roof. This is media pictures. This is mainstream media. This is Russia Today saying they're inside of it when Seth Dorn was there. There was CBC and everybody else was there. I covered it many times. But see, the reactor didn't survive, right? Look at the torque that this tsunami had. Oh no, Dana, reactor survived throughout the country. Just let me remind you that when these creatures, these death machines, these perpetual misery machines, started eradicating this planet, that's what they're done. They kill the Pacific Ocean, like I showed you earlier. Australia forecast on March the 15th, 4 days later, they're only using data. All of these that I'm going to show you are using data from that building, from a manual release, not from the meltdowns or chain reactions or anything else. They're not including anything from that. They're not including anything from Unit 3. They're not including Unit 4. But the models, Australia, and you've got the Norwegian Institute for Air Research, are based upon just a couple of isotopes man released. They're not based upon the real releases. Cesium is just a tracer, but that's the Eurorad project, and that's what theirs look like. So inupdated all the continents. You got the IRS and Francis Institute modeling it. You got the Norwegian Institute was forced to end it because they want to put out this theory that the reactor survived like that building. Not that that building survived, they rebuilt it. You can see it down below. They've patched it up and that, cleaned it up. You can't do that. See, you can't do that. You can't do that. They're 10-story buildings. They don't look like that. They never did. They got no way of showing you outside of CBS's trickery. Deception. That's utter deception. CBS should lose their license for doing this.
Taking place here
they should be put in jail.
4.
There should be a congressional inquiry. They should be disbanded. They should be taken off the stock exchange. They should be prosecuted and vilified and demonized in the media instead of me. All I'm doing is showing you the data. But that's what they do with me. They completely attack me. And the data is showing how these reactors, how they produce the neutrons or the atoms, the radioactive atoms, how they split. It takes about 11 hours for these to go empty if you don't get water in there. Do you think they got water in there in 11 hours? Do you think they put that road there in 11 hours? You think any of that happened in 11 hours? Huh? You think they got power to that? You think they got power to that? Do you? Or the other reactors? Because you're crazy. You've been sucked in. You've been deceived. You've been manipulated. And there's not just one. There's at least 10 that should have been torn apart. The jet streams are real. The ocean currents. The jet streams are real. This is, they took the water from the building's basements and then they sprayed it on the reactors. And so this is even worse. And they've done that for 45 days or so. Salt water from the reactors. And it created these sulfur peroxide hydrogen buckyballs. And these are deadly. These are unbelievable. That's why we see the mass extinction event in the Pacific Ocean. That's why we see the death of the Pacific Ocean. We're winding down. That's why we see rain with 20 million particles. 20 million! Do you know how many you allowed in your food in Germany? 5. What about you getting 20 million per litre of rainwater? Does rain fall by the litre? And the average person was breathing, if they were lucky, just 10 hot. It only takes one to give you a cancer, but cancer is the last one to show up. It's the mouse in the room. There's 1,800 diseases will show up before cancer. And diabetes is just one of the really visible, highly recognizable manifestations. But children's deaths and premature disabilities, there's 1,800 autoimmune triggers. And that's Alzheimer's, dementia, autism, passed on to your children. Dr. Raymond Gilmedy, go look up his studies and come back and talk to me if you can't wrap your mind around it. Or if you think I'm wrong. So the radiation data from the Seattle area survey that you paid for, you gave them the authority, you gave them the monitor, you gave them the equipment, you gave them whatever they wanted to go get the data, and they're going to withhold it because they'll lose their pensions, and you'll find out that they're lying sacks of shit mass murderers, that they're cowards and traitors to their families and loved ones and everybody that ever come in contact with them and anybody that they're tasked with providing documentation for. You paid for it, they fucked you. They fucked you, they murdered you, they killed you, but you don't understand that yet. You will. TEPCO is ready to release radiation at any time, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year till the end of time. But they won't tell you the documentation. Like Harvard and Yale and Berkeley come out and tell you, but you never heard it after. You never heard it from them after. That was the only time you ever heard them, and that's why I play those clips all the time. You will never hear it from them again. Government delayed the 7 rating to ease people into the harshness. You never eased them into anything. You never told them the truth on anything. So that's an outright fabrication on its own. See? No, it's like a banana or a potato chip or walking in sunshine or getting on an airplane. People like that should be on their back calling for an ambulance because they can't fucking breathe. Because the people they told it to fucking choke the shit out of them. 40 million becquerels of iodine-131 in a single bed of kelp. No, it's okay, Dan. It's like potato chips and walking in the sunshine. Boom. 1,501 atoms of radioactive sulfur. That was the buckyballs I was showing you earlier. Per meter. These were hot particles. Incredibly, unbelievable, unimaginable, inconceivable, damaging to your genetics, your DNA, your chromosome, to your white blood cells are agitated into overdrive. It's taxing your entire body the more you get in you. And you got to go watch that one at Jan Brooks, Miss Milky the Clown one, on tritium that she just put up last night, I think it was. I watched it like 4 times, or heard it 4 times, I should say. And I still can't wrap my mind around it. So there's a lot going on there. You got to be able to extrapolate, but it's a start, see? And there's real data there. And that's a weapon video. You can weaponize parts of that now and use it to bludgeon the freaks into submission, hopefully. Let's come over and say good day to everybody. That's the stream. That's what we got. And that was enough. Dana didn't plug it in. So hang on. I can do that. How did I not plug it in? I came over and said hi to everybody earlier, but I wasn't even plugged in. Is that what happened? Or did I come over and say hi to everybody this morning? I can't remember. Oh yeah, we went into the 911 for the first half an hour of the show. I kind of lost my way, didn't I? Let's see the giggly. Ah, yes. Good morning, everyone. Disconnected recording in 1 second. What? Oh, I lost the stream because I done that. I got a shit computer. It's killing me. Oh, we got the stream back. Okay, I'll say hi to everybody that's there because I can't refresh the page or I'll lose everything. Hugs for everybody. Thank you, everyone. Amthers, White Sparrow, Bruce, Kay, Andreas. Thank you, everyone. Hugs. Elaine, Jan Brooks was out there, I see. Pam, there she is again. Yeah, it was a good broadcast. Thank you, Jan. And everybody else, once again, Mickey, anybody checks and balances. And I know some people gets caught up in the comment sections on my YouTube video. And I can't get to those questions right now because I can't remember them. I should have screen captured them. But, you know, that's important, right? That venue is here. And soon we're going to be a lot better again. Soon I'll have the kinks out that'll be broadcasting full-time to 3 live streams a day. And I'll rebroadcast after that to 3 more. So we're going to push like I've never pushed before. I'm going to work like I never... And I don't stop. But I see that now, that I'm getting that capacity to come out and bang into this system really well. Hugs for everybody. We'll see everybody tomorrow, 10:30 a.m. Pacific Canada time, British Columbia time. And Friday is a no-show for me. I'll be taking a long weekend. I'm not saying what I'm up to, but I'm up to something anyway. And so I'll be gone. I won't be here Friday. I'll be back on that Monday. But I'll be here tomorrow. We'll be here on Thursday. And hugs for everybody.